I can't believe you did that. Now look at yourself. I shouldn't have said, oh my God, my last messages didn't resonate with everyone. I shouldn't have said yes to that. I don't know why I did that. You're a pushover. I prioritized their plans and now I'm behind on my own plans. Are you getting fat? Do I look fat? Do I look like I've gained weight? No, that doesn't look right again. Stupid. I can't get it right. Fix it again. Fix it again till you destroy the entire painting and it has lost all sense of originality that it once breathed. Excuse me, the buzzword is authenticity. Authenticity? Can't believe you missed that. Yes, fix it 20 times till you've completely destroyed the whole thing. That's what happens when you keep on changing yourself or your original endeavor again and again and again because you're people pleasing, because you don't have self-trust, because you've lost connection with your intuition, because you put the opinions of other people and their views above your own. You're reliant on them. Don't worry, I've walked this path too, my friend. And in this video, I'm going to teach you how to carve out a new path where you break free of the shackles of people pleasing, a new path where you work with your negative critic instead of letting it control your life. I'm not only going to go into the many layers of that relationship, but I'm also going to teach you how to stop hating and berating yourself and let your hardworking negative critic take a back seat so that you can break free of the shackles of people pleasing, of the childhood survival strategy pattern that has been suffocating you. And you know what I mean, and you know that I'm with you, so that you can become more empowered, self-validating, more integrated, more in love with yourself, and more connected to your higher power. Not somebody else's opinion of you, maybe projected onto you. Don't worry, friend. We're going to go into it now. A brief moment for the ridiculousness of people-pleasing. It's not a word. Oh my God, my last messages didn't resonate with everyone. I should really care and I should really berate myself and try to adjust the message again and again and again so I can please the countless numbers of people on the internet who may pass this video. Do you see how ridiculous that is? It's impossible to do also. It's impossible. You ain't gonna please everyone. In fact, pleasing everyone is going to erode your mind, body, and soul. Yes, it will. We are multidimensional beings, and people pleasing actually messes with all of those parts of your psyche. I could go on and on and on into the countless examples of how you may have people pleased and now are berating yourself, punishing yourself for it. But I'll leave it there for a minute. If you notice that your negative critic, it's always this thing of you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. It's never really right, is it? Or maybe it's only right when there's a 100% validation from the outside, which is practically impossible to get. You know, you've tried, I've tried, and I'm glad that we failed actually. Because imagine if we kept succeeding, we would be completely disconnected with our actual source of empowerment. We really would be. So every time that it hurts a bit, that you weren't approved of, remind yourself that this is actually an opportunity to get closer to your connection with source, to your intuition, to your empowerment, etc. One of the biggest points also of this video is this struggle that you may be having when you are developing your boundaries. You're trying to honor your boundaries and your needs. Needs are boundaries, by the way, but I always like to specify the two so that we can remind ourselves that it's not just about this saying no, it's also about honoring what we say yes to. That is actually our need. You may be trying to honor them, and then you may be making a mistake. You may not have gone all the way. You may have backed down on them. You may have relapsed. I'm going to call it a relapse sometimes, right? You made this mistake. You people pleased again. And now your negative critic is berating you for it. What's interesting to me about the pattern of the negative critic is that it's not only supporting people pleasing, It also will punish you too once you're trying to do personal development and now you've also made a little mistake. It is never really good enough for the negative critic. The way it works is to whip you into shape, to put you, to punish you, to get you to be afraid that of anything you potentially can do or you've already done that may be some kind of mistake. It's not always about something that is even actually a mistake. Let's dive into the origins of the negative critic. It's born from your childhood at around the age of 5 years old. From that age where you start reflecting, you start becoming more conscious and reflecting and taking on the approval or disapproval of your caretakers. And you can also say that that's the age where a lot of children start going to school. You can go to school earlier than that, but that's about the age where you start to take it on. And they say that the negative critic is fully developed by the age of 8. And maybe your negative critic, you can say it has, you can notice your negative critic. Maybe it has certain voices, it has phrases even of, or certain things that it focuses on a lot. That is from certain caregivers. And those caregivers, you may be at war with them actually. And this video is all about how to take them off of the pedestal. This week, I got into a meditative state to have a chat with my negative critic. And not just I, the part of me that is reparenting myself, the part of me that holds space for all parts of myself, an adult part that does not operate out of conditional love, that does not hate parts of myself, that holds space for all of them that exist. And yes, we have many parts. This is part of the breath, actually, breath with a D in it, of holistic Juniper. Holistic. It's not just holistic health about treating your body as your temple. It's also acknowledging that we have many parts. And this part of integrating yourself, becoming integrated, really be stepping into this role of reparenting yourself, which you have to do if you're a people pleaser, really. I mean, you don't have to, but you can, you get to if you work at this, you get to transcend, break free of these shackles. This is about reparenting yourself. And so I had asked, is everyone all right here? Can I have a chat with the critic? Are you guys all okay with this? And everyone was okay, except for the bodyguard of my negative critic. Yes, my negative critic has a bodyguard and also berates me. But I was able to be let into the door of the negative critic, and I discovered, boom, this big flashback to a wound that I've worked with. I've worked with many layers of it for off and on when it's come up over the years, and it flashed me back to kindergarten. And then I had to wonder, is that the age actually when this begins? Because when I thought about it, there were other traumatic events that happened in my life before the age of 5 that I remember that had strong trauma imprints, as they're called, that left those on my psyche. But never can I trace back a core negative belief that was this reflectory thing where I was berating myself. Here's the thing also to understand and to really acknowledge. And I know this is going to sound like, oh, so what? I have to befriend my negative critic? Really? Let's acknowledge that the negative critic is very hard working. It's hard working. Think about it. It doesn't stop pretty much. The only times really where I have found that the negative critic stops altogether is when I'm in a flow state, in a complete intuitive state, operating from access with the divine, working with that co-creation, intimate connection with source energy, the creative flow. And the most frustrating thing actually is when you're blocked from that, which is what happens to a lot of artists who have a really strong negative critic and they're not working on unblocking these patterns that the negative critic is gripping onto and they are attaching to themselves. The negative critic operates in these black and white extremes. It's all or nothing. You're either going to get that 100 validation from people or you are a POS. It's always going to keep setting the bar higher, or you know what? It may not even be higher. It may just put it over there now. You'll notice. So, for example, in my own life, where I really started to discover how ridiculous this really is. My grandmother, rest in peace, bless her. She was a wonderful grandmother when I was a little girl. She taught me really so much of what I know. And she had the most patience, more than a Buddhist monk. But as I got a little older, as I reached teen years and older than that, she became increasingly critical of me and criticized everything. She would come into my room sometimes when I'd be painting, and she would say, "Oh, that doesn't look like you." If it was like a self portrait I was doing, "Oh, you should just change it just to," oh, I shouldn't say anything. And I would get really angry and be like, "Leave me alone. It's not for you to critique right now." Blah, 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 blah. And we'd have a little fight about it. It was like a little codependent battle between the two of us that was going on. And what was it is that she really just wanted attention. She wanted to nag because there was some unmet need in her. And this is something that you might benefit from understanding, is that every complaint that is put out in the world is actually an unmet need. People are going around expressing these all day long and not actually meeting them themselves sometimes. If you look at the comment section, you can tell that I'm sometimes divisive. This is part of my personal development. I'm going to ruffle some feathers out there of people who I just rub the wrong way. I trigger them or whatever it is. And that's something for me to process if I want to take that on. To process that this is, ooh, ooh, uh-oh, I didn't please them. I didn't please them. Haters are my motivators now. There is always going to be someone that has something to say about something. One of the things I would notice about my grandmother as I got older and I started working on personal development is how ludicrous, how absurd some of the criticisms that she would give me were. For example, this woman lived till almost 102. So I really got a lot of time to see how I was developing actually. Every time I would visit her, I would see what had shifted in me. And, sometimes she would say things like, "Don't you wear makeup anymore?" And I would say, "Grandma, I'm wearing a full face of makeup." For years and years, I would revisit her, and she was blind practically by that point. She also was quite deaf. But anyway, it's like she would say things to me that had no they weren't even rooted in reality. Stuff like little snarky criticisms, and I would think, "You can't even see me. You're just operating like a broken record now." And it was life shattering. It was enlightening, honestly, to go through this. It was also quite sad, to be honest, to think like, geez, these patterns are still in me. And this woman who, I love, obviously, but her human self, a lot of the abuse that she took from my older brother, she was taking it out on me. And I could understand that, but it's not okay. And it's also not okay when it continues to happen inside of me, when it continues to happen inside of you, right? So I started to see this is not rooted in reality. I mean, the most ludicrous of them all was when I was at my fattest point in life and she said that you're so thin. And I was like, "Oh, now I have approval." And thought, actually, I know it. Logically, I knew I was at my fattest in life. And I thought, this is just absurd, but I'm glad I'm working on myself. And I had to have a laugh about it. I really did. So, really, it makes you think, what are the projections also that are being thrown at you? You've got to also take this into account that there's tons of projections going out there. You may be so frustrated too by that you don't want to care anymore that someone approves of you, but it still maybe hurts a bit. Changing your text 10 different times because you're afraid that it might offend someone, changing your outfit 10 times and still not feeling like you are confident enough, still not knowing what is actually going to land with everyone in the room, adjusting your art 10 times till you have lost all originality. everything from its true essence. Changing your tone because, oh my God, somebody might judge it. Someone will think that I'm a little bit too passionate and it might rub them the wrong way. Oh, no, I shouldn't share my story as a sex worker because somebody will think they'll project their entire story and think that I'm a person who's been human trafficked. And then everybody else who's watching this will interpret this the wrong way. And they'll all judge me as a pathetic sex worker. And I'm going to have to take that on. I'm going to have to take that on and it's going to erode my self-esteem. I don't think so. I get to shift away from any of that wiring that's still doing that, that's still catering to that. And the negative critic, it will adjust and adjust and adjust and adjust because it's trying to protect you. Yeah, it's trying to protect you. And you may be fed up with it. Something else I want to say. If you're on the spiritual path and you're like, oh my God, I've been doing this for years and like this is still affecting me and oh my God, have I even like actually healed? Hang on there. This is something that has layers once again, and maybe you know that by now, right? But it's good to hear it from me, and it's good for me to remind myself this too. I am working at a very deep level now where I'm seeing where this affects me. Maybe I'm not doing it outwardly anymore at this point in my journey, but it's happening internally. Internally, little things will dysregulate my nervous system when I am not people pleasing or I'm not approved of by everyone. And I will be at war. There's a part of myself that it really feels like so vulnerable from this and like the victim thing. And then there's a part of me that's really angry about it, that's angry that I care. And that part, that can be it can be something that I can work with. I can use that emotion of anger in a conscious way to motivate me to affect change, right? That I'm going to actually go in there at this with this catalyst, and I'm going to work with this catalyst now because it's revealing to me something lingering. Even if it's on a mental level, it's lingering, and it's something that I can reprogram, that I can shift from. And so don't get lazy again. Like, use these catalysts. Don't think that you're above them. Yeah, it's humiliating in a way because it's humility. It's about transformation of this. It's about healing it. So there's going to be a little humility sometimes that comes up. Let's get into unconditional positive regard now. This is also something to practice, is that know that you are a human, that you are fallible. And this is not about letting yourself off the hook. This is about stepping into that parent role and the reparenting role, not the parent that you had, the caretakers that you once had. It's about you reparenting yourself, that you have unconditional positive regard for yourself as a human, that you, no matter what, you will view yourself as human who is trying their best, because we actually are trying our best at every given time. We really are. And the negative critic will tell us that we're not. It will berate ourselves because it's operating from this old way that punishing ourselves is going to produce growth, but it doesn't. We'll get into that in another video. But it doesn't. And instead, what unconditional positive regard is all about, it is about acknowledging your humanity, falling in love even with your humanity, not trying to escape it and trying to think that even, if you're on a spiritual path, your spiritual ego will come in and think that it just needs to transcend to being human, but you're here to have a human experience as an eternal being. And unconditional positive regard, it's not about accepting the behaviors that are unhealthy in us, that we're operating on. It is not about that. It's about seeing them, knowing that we want to change them, but accepting our humanity and that we're trying our best. So you can dislike those behaviors and want to change them and also hold space for yourself as a human. In order to grow, we need to be valued and accepted without conditions, And so every time that we allow this people pleasing to take charge, we are never going to get that. We need to give it to ourselves. So how do we do this? We need to become more secure. This means your caretaking of yourself, your self-care, for example, it is unconditional. Doesn't matter how you did, once again, you still give yourself self-care. And let's note on this thing about dysregulation of the nervous system, actually. This is important because this is what people pleasing is doing in us. This is what's happening, is this actually is rooted in the nervous system. All of these little patterns that it's causing this dysregulation happening. And so this is why it's also so important to still practice self-care. I'm probably going to say this again and again and again in a lot of videos because I suffered for years. I let my negative critic control the show, and I would withhold doing certain self care because I didn't deserve it. I mean, it's just no, if you're doing this, I want to tell you, like, stop. I want to say stop, but that's your choice, you know? But I will reveal to you, it's like, I would if I didn't succeed in my never-ending to-do list of an entrepreneur by 3 a.m., I'm not even joking, then I would not deserve a bubble bath. And it's BS. Give yourself self-care no matter what. It is unconditional. Unconditional. And I'm not talking about being completely indulgent when you maybe that's out of your budget right now. And I will, in the coming year, have like a holistic self-care guide that I'm creating. I'm creating things for this to actually teach you how to do this. And there's things that you can do that are within your budget. There's things you can do that are free. There's things that you can do that are more luxury. There's all kinds of forms of self-care. It's not just about taking yourself for a $150 plus um, tip massage, which is great for you. I think our bodies really need them actually, but it's out of some people's budget. But you can actually you can give yourself a massage. This is greatly reduced the importance of to actually be giving your nervous system the care that it needs. It means that you become secure, that you become that parent, that you are showing yourself, where did you try today? Where did you? What were your successes? Here's a little tool. This is so important. Grab yourself a handy notebook here, okay, and your writing utensil. And every day before bed, reflect on what your successes were. And this is not necessarily successes of achievements. This is awarenesses. Awarenesses. Because you see, it's easy with successes for us to get caught up on where we didn't really do good enough, or like we, you know, we still are trying to get into this like hamster wheel of achieving. This is great. It is important to note where we are moving the needle on things that we want to work with our goals. But the more important thing here is to note where our awarenesses are happening. Do not let those escape you. So for example, something like you didn't express the boundary, you didn't put the boundary down completely, but you noticed what happened. Journal about it. Congrats that you have noticed where you fell short on the boundary. Celebrating that is actually very important for you. Now you can optimize your strategy. What do I want to do next time? How do I want to behave next time? And you can wire this in with your subconscious. Maybe it's something like, I am good enough in my relationship area of life because I noticed the pattern and I'm ready to break it. And you can feel that. You can feel I'm good enough expanding in you. Feel it in your body. It has to be an emotion of expansion, of positivity. And your negative critic, when you do this once again, it's going to be like, that's not good enough, blah, blah, blah. If you can believe it just this much, that's enough. It's enough, actually. Has to be somewhat believable, like I've said before. When you record your awarenesses at night, yes, you can also record your successes. And this is important to do because you probably want to have your goals and you want to achieve them, right? And so you will start writing them down. Don't reduce the baby steps. This is super important, and the baby steps accumulate into the larger picture. But the negative critic, because it's so focused on all or nothing and generalizations, it is not going to, it's going to dismiss them. And it's going to focus on where you made a mistake. And you can, it doesn't help actually to be like, oh, well, F you too to your negative critic. That doesn't work. Okay. It does not work. I've tried it. Maybe you have too. Instead, it's better to just agree. Agree. Yes, I see. I made that mistake. But what I did achieve today, where I had a success, was in this one little moment when I was able to edit the video and I was able to get this new sound bite in there and whatever it is. You record those things. You record where your success really is. One more example. Maybe it's something like your negative critic will say, like, well, you left a bunch of details out. And you can say, thank you for pointing that out to me. I left some details out, not everything, right? I left some details out, but I really rocked in this area. And you can phrase this actually in with your name. This is very important actually, to talk to yourself with your name. Like you are reparenting yourself, right? You say, yes, maybe I left some points out, but Juniper, you really rocked today when you gave that presentation on reparenting yourself. I love the way you showed up vulnerably, and you even showed poo on your bed, even though he's got a couple of little dirt stains here and there. The people who this resonates with will resonate with it. And I'm really proud of you on this journey for putting yourself out there, because this is the next step for you. This is the step for you to shift even more into this path of growth and service with the world. And to be a true leader in this world, Juniper, you already know that you're not going to be approved of by everyone. You're here to connect with those people who truly resonate and are here to receive the medicine, your unique medicine that you're giving the world. I'm so proud of you. I'm really appreciating all the work you're doing. Really write this down. Write this down and jazz it up. Get yourself some stickers, get yourself some cool, different colored pens, and write this to yourself. We really reduce how important this can be, how powerful this can be, but it really does help. And you can even validate yourself more and put a whole little heart over the page. We can put our own heart and approve of ourselves. Remind yourself that self-love is not about, oh, how good you were today, how successful you were. When you really, really practice self-love, the best way to practice it is on the days when you can't stand yourself, when you hate yourself, when your negative critic is roaring. That is the perfect time to do it. And it really is in doing these acts of service for yourself, words of affirmation. We talk about love languages, right? Maybe you've heard of them. There's 5 different ones, like gifts, words of affirmation, acts of service, for example, quality time. You can practice these on yourself. In fact, a lot of people just wait around for somebody else to give it to them. But when you start practicing for yourself, that's when you start to notice when someone is actually doing that for you too. You start to be more receptive of it. You start to have a standard for yourself. Another tool that you can use also involves writing, but what you want to do is you want to get yourself a bunch of different colored markers or pens. These are pens. And you can grab like maybe 3 different ones. It really depends on how many parts of yourself are coming out for the party. And one of them can be your higher self that's talking to you, is reparenting you. And then as soon as something may shift in you, and you will feel this intuitively, maybe your critic steps in, grab another pen and write with that color. And you can keep doing this so you can start to dissect, what are these parts of you? Yeah, it can be a little scary. It can be a little bit trippy. Some people think this is crazy because they're not actually on the path of personal development, but this is totally normal. We have many parts. We're all a bit fragmented. And that's part of how consciousness works. And you can write back and forth to yourself. And you, at the end of the day, you can have this voice, your higher self, that's really holding space for them all, and that closes the deal on that page. Next thing, your self-talk needs to change. You have to notice, how are you speaking to yourself? Are you saying things like, "Ugh, I'm such a failure"? What is it that you're saying? What is going off in your head? What is the negative critic saying? Maybe it does things like, if you have body dysmorphia, it's like, "Oh my God, you look so fat." Or it's like constantly like, "Oh, you should have changed that. Oh, now nobody's going to click on this. Oh," because it's all about depending on this outcome. It's not ever about really being in a path of service. No, because I can guarantee you also that if you're on the spiritual path, that this is about actually being, you're unfolding into your service in the world, because that's what we're here to. We're here to serve each other, not people please. We're here to serve each other. And when we serve each other, you have to be authentic to be able to serve. You cannot actually serve selflessly if you're self-consumed with people pleasing. So this means that every given moment when this negative self-talk comes up, don't be lazy. Do it now. Do it now. I say it to myself sometimes in this little voice. I do it with all kinds of things that I'm trying to repattern. As soon as I notice it, I say, there's this part of me that's like, ugh, it's too hard. Like, ugh, I don't want to do that. Oh, it's fine. It's just the negative critic. Do not dismiss this, okay? Because I notice, as I would get a little bit of success, I would get a little lazy. And this happens to many people until they really break free of this and they're fully in what they're doing. Like, they work out all the time. They've been doing it for years. But in the beginning, they probably go over this hurdle too, where they get some gains and then they see those gains and they get a little afraid of success, or they get a little bit lazy. I'm sorry if that offends anyone. I'm doing it in a way that's like, just like pointing it out. It's not about berating myself, okay? It's about like, don't be lazy. Don't be lazy. Do it now. Do it now. And I'm like, right, all right. It's sort of like a wah, wah. I'm like, yes, this is it. This is my opportunity to reprogram this. So this thing goes off. Oh, you're looking fat. You're looking fat. I can say to my negative critic, yes, maybe I have gained weight. And I'm working on that now. But even if I was to gain 200 pounds more, I'm going to love myself no matter what. This does not reduce my value. I understand that you're looking out for me and you want me to be loved by other people, but my love for myself and my love that God has for me is not dependent on what the outside world thinks. You have to commit to this and feel this. I love myself regardless of what happens on the outside. I love myself. And now attune to that blossoming flower, that blossoming rose, or whatever positive object you have within that you resonate with, that brings you positivity, that brings up expansion in you, the feeling of it. I'll share with you my next thing. This is a tool. I was going to save this for a whole other video, but maybe we'll talk about it again somewhere. This is my Pooh Bear, my spirit doll. Years ago, I kept going to others for advice all the time. When I was early in my journey, I was just so a shell of a girl. And I was tired. I was tired of going to other people for advice. I knew I was in this pattern that I couldn't stand any longer. I could not stand how disempowering this was. I couldn't afford, at the time, I couldn't afford therapy all the time. And I thought, really, I needed even more than just therapy was giving me. I needed to have somewhere that I could go every day that I was approved of. And I'm starting to feel really emotional saying this, actually, because it's very tender for me. I read this thing about programmers that they had like this bobblehead going, and when they needed to like hash out an idea, they would talk to the bobblehead, and the bobblehead would work its head up and down, and they would be like, yes, okay, I'll go with that idea. And I thought, well, I could get a bobblehead, or maybe I could just like get like a stuffed animal or something. So I walked over to the E Mart, which is a big shop in Korea where I lived at the time. It's like a big department store. And I walked over to the children's section and I looked through the dolls and I was like, what am I gonna pick? Like there was things I'd never known that were just Korean. And then walked to this part of the aisle and there he was, my Pooh Bear. And I saw him and I was like, he's the one. He's such a classic. And it was like at the time where I could barely make decisions. I just, every decision I felt like I was always doing something wrong. It was never good enough. I was always doubting myself constantly. You know what I mean? It sucks, right? And I saw Pooh and it was like an instant, he's the one. And I grabbed him off the shelf and I bought him and I took him home and I talked to him. And yeah, my negative critic at first was like, this is so dumb. You're like, all these things. But I talked to him and I talked to him, and he became my spirit doll. He needs a little wash soon. He's been traveling. And so I talked to him all the time. I played out things that were going on internally, and he held space for me. He listened. And he listened with unconditional positive regard. He listened and he didn't try to fix me or change me. He didn't try to rescue me. He didn't ever say that anything that hurt me. And so I really encourage you to get yourself a stuffed animal that resonates with you. That really, when you see it, you feel like he's on my side. And also, what I like about this Pooh Bear is that he's like the perfect size. So he's a great pillow. This size is just so nice. It feels like I'm hugging something and it's hugging me back. So I encourage you to get one and to talk to it, like it's really your best friend. And that will develop something inside. You won't go to the outside so much. So, my friend, I'm going to leave it there for now. I hope you really enjoyed this video. If you liked it, if it was of service to you, give it a thumbs up. It helps the channel. It helps other people find it who are needing of it. And if you want to stay connected, subscribe. I'll see you next time. Mwah.